What does it mean to be truly wealthy? How much money does it take? Do you have a number in mind of the amount of money that you need in order to have a happy retirement? Do you have any idea what that number will or will not buy you? Do you even think it's possible? Today, we are going to dig into all of that and go through the various wealth tiers that people can arrive at in their retirement and talk about what that can truly buy and afford people that are at those various levels. Let's see if we can break some misconceptions over what is really wealthy and what money can afford at the different levels. But first, if you've been enjoying this content, please subscribe. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm. It's completely free, and I can continue to provide you more content like this. So let's get into it. So we're going to go through all the wealth tiers, and this is covering investable assets. So this would be net worth, not including, say, a primary residence. Okay, so just the investable assets. And I'm going to talk about how this could be spent, how this could be donated. And when it comes to spending, we're going to talk about specifically, what could a vacation look like? What could a home look like? And then finally, what the legacy, the financial legacy that's left behind can look like as well. So let's get into it. So the first tier would be $1 million of investable assets. So a lot of people nowadays, $1 million gets a bad rap. People will say, well, $1 million that's what a poor person thinks a rich person would have. And once you get $1 million, you realize that that's really not that much at all. But with a little help of Google, the statistics bear it out that $1 million is a lot and not many people have it, especially an investable $1 million. So the estimates I found say that there's about 6 million households in the United States that have investable assets of at least $1 million. So $1 million gets a bad rap. Aside from being called, well, that's what people think is rich, but not really. Some people may also say, well, that's the idea of a 1950s rich person, because we've had such inflation now that $1 million really isn't that much. But if you really think about it, if you have a pension or Social Security, or even better if you have both. But if you have one of those, you don't need to draw down as much on this $1 million as you may think. And in addition to this, I'll give you the numbers for what, say, a 5% return would be. And that's if you just had a 5% increase in the assets because of whatever they're invested in, or if you were just getting 5% dividend checks off these assets. So for $1 million, that would be 50 grand a year. Now, if you pair that with another 50 grand in Social Security, you're actually living a pretty good retirement. Assume if you have kids, they're on your own, you've paid off your house, and you have 100 grand of income, and that's without touching your principal, you can have a pretty nice retirement. Your house is paid for. You can probably go on decent vacations. You're not going to stay in, immaculate 5-star resorts, but you can stay at very nice hotels. You can have a very decent car. You could get a car that you really liked. Maybe you wouldn't have a super luxury car, but you can have a very reliable car, a nice car. And when it comes to donations, you can probably give away 10 grand a year to a church or to another organization that you care about, a local youth group or a school that you went to. That's a very nice size donation. And then as far as leaving a legacy, you could pass on that money to an organization you care about or a family member that you care about. And chances are, assuming that they're significantly younger than you, that could be a material improvement in their life if they get, say, $1 million or $500,000 if it's split up. So $1 million is still a very decent net worth, especially when you partner it with Social Security. And even if you don't, you can still live a very comfortable retirement on $1 million. If you look at $5 million, that's the next tier that we'll talk about. There are 3.4 million households in the United States that have $5 million of investable assets. If we take 5% of that, that's about a $250,000 income. That's a significant income. I'd classify this as a very, very nice American dream, right? That could be a very comfortable American dream retirement. You can have a nice home that you would have paid off. You could have a luxury car, some very nice $80,000 car. You could take very nice vacations, 1 or 2 a year that could cost, tens of thousands of dollars to other parts of the world, to in very nice hotels. You could do that, and then your giving could be quite substantial, especially to local organizations. You can really make a significant impact. Say you give $20,000, $30,000. And then finally, if this is passed on to children, boy, that's going to be significant money. Say if you have anywhere from 1 to 3 kids, that could be 5 million, that could be 2 million and change. That's very substantial. That can make a big impact in people's lives. Then you go on to, now we're getting into the much bigger numbers. $10 million of investable assets. That would be less than 1 million households in America, less than 1 million households. If you got 5% on that, that would be $500,000 a year. And this is a tipping point, right? I think $10 million is a tipping point where many, many people will actually find it hard to spend the money. Because if you think about it, you could buy a new luxury car every year, and then at the end of the year, sell it back, take a hit on depreciation, and buy a new luxury car for, say, $100,000. And have the brand new model year. Now, I think that's a waste of money. I'm not saying that's what you should do, but I'm just trying to put it in perspective of what that kind of money could afford someone with, say, a $10 million retirement. In addition, at that point, you might have to start being careful to what organizations you give money to, because a lot of local organizations, if you want to donate to them, you want to donate, say, $100,000 or even $200,000. That can make a material difference in that organization's budget. They may not know how to handle it, or they may, but it's worth trying to consider what that would look like if you made a donation like that. And then obviously inheritance, that would be, amazing for anyone to inherit. And I think at 10 million, you also get to the point where the inheritance, you might have to be concerned that it might cause an issue, right? If you had 2 kids and then they each get $5 million, you want to make sure that those 2 kids were raised with strong values and a work ethic, and understand this isn't just a Powerball and a license to just go sit on a beach, right? I think if you're passing on $10 million, even if it's split in $5 million, I think that's where you have to start to really be concerned about it. I think you should be concerned about it at all of these levels, but at that level, that's when someone could really do some damage if they just got a $5 million check and really didn't know what to do with it. So let's keep moving quickly. $100 million, $100 million net worth. There's less than 11,000 people in America that have at least $100 million. This is the 0.003%. And if you got 5% on that, that'd be $5 million. This is starting to get to extreme levels of wealth, right? If we take the car example again, you could buy not just a $100,000 car, you could buy a $200,000 car every month practically. And then at the end of the month, drive it off a cliff, send it off a cliff, not with you in it. Don't do that. That's not advisable. But, send it off a cliff and then go buy another one, right? You can really, really spend a lot of money. I don't think this is quite private jet territory, owning a private jet. At $100 million, you can fly in a private jet. You can charter a jet. There's services that you can sign up for, and you can just pay for private air travel without the hassle of hiring pilots and actually owning a jet and finding a hangar to park it in and everything that goes with that. You could definitely do that. All the hotels are at your disposal. Even that one, if you remember from one of my earlier videos on the most expensive gifts, there was that resort out in, I think, Utah it was, where it was $10,000 a night. You could do things like that with $100 million. You could do insane things. You could go to all the major sporting events. And this is where donations can make a tremendous impact. You have to be very careful who you donate this money to make sure they even know how to handle money at that scale. If you're donating millions of dollars. Also, when it comes to investments, you may not necessarily just be able to take $50 million and throw it in a particular ETF or mutual fund. If you're looking at smaller funds, that may increase a fund by 50%, the assets under management. And so you start to get into the size of money where you have to be careful about that. To make sure that if you do put that amount of money in a fund, that they will also be able to handle it. And this is where it'll certainly make sense to have professional help in the area. And then the final level, yes, you've been waiting for it, $1 billion. If you have a $1 billion net worth, that's going to be less than 1,000 individuals. Think about that. That's 0.0025%. this is, this is private jet territory. This is multiple home territory. This is whatever car, supercar you want. It's really, there's few things that you cannot buy. And to give you an example, if you look at Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful from Shark Tank, he's a billionaire, and he can essentially buy, right, whatever he wants. That's what this level of wealth affords you, as long as it's available. And so then the competition becomes rarity. It doesn't necessarily become things that are expensive. And so he is a big watch guy. And there's certain companies that won't let you buy their, super duper watch if you don't have a history of buying multiple watches from them. And so the ultimate watch that they make may not be more than a few $100,000. I understand that sounds extreme, but not, for people with $1 billion or more dollars. So there becomes a rarity that, he can't just walk into somewhere and say, I want this latest Ferrari, I'll write the check for $1 million now. He'll be told, no, there's a waiting list, right? So there becomes money no longer becomes the restraint. History and relationships become the restraint in terms of access of certain items. So money doesn't just buy anything at that point. And it's worth noting that if you want to, we've heard before, the 1% is often viewed as the uber rich. What does it take to be in the 1% in 2025? My Google research tells me that it is about $12 million. A $12 million net worth will get you into the top 1% of Americans. The top 10%, you need approximately $1.5 million net worth to be in about the top 10%. So that certainly sounds a lot more attainable. Getting over that 10 million, definitely incredibly hard. Remember the 10 million threshold, there's only less than a million households in America that do that. So that's a breakdown of the different tiers. What do you think about these tiers? Which tier are you aspiring to? Which tier do you think is most practical? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Have a good night.